They told us we were a forgotten dream, a myth whispered by the stars and then dismissed as cosmic dust. That was the deepest cut. Not that we were conquered, not that our worlds were lost, but that we had been deemed so insignificant, so chaotic, that the galaxy's memory was better off without us. The great lie was that we had simply faded, a species that couldn't adapt, a footnote in the grand, silent library of the cosmos, curated by the entity we came to know as the Stillness. For generations, they had moved through the star lanes not with fleets of war, but with waves of quiet, a creeping placidity that absorbed civilizations, smoothing over the rough, vibrant edges of culture until all that remained was a serene, homogeneous whole. They didn't burn cities, they redacted them. They didn't execute leaders, they made them forget they had ever led. Theirs was a conquest of consciousness itself and humanity, with its cacophony of emotions, its violent art and loving wars, was the ultimate anomaly, a discordant note in their grand, silent symphony. They believed they had quieted us. They had taken Earth, not with fire and ruin, but by wrapping it in an informational shroud, suppressing its historical records, and seeding its scattered children across a dozen systems with new histories, new homeworlds, making them forget the taste of Terran rain or the sight of a single yellow sun. They thought the last echo of our true selves had finally gone silent. They were wrong. My name is Ilara, and I am a keeper. Not a soldier, not a captain, but a librarian of a dead world. Our home was a hollowed-out moonlet we called Mnemosyne, a pinprick of defiant memory hidden in the swirling nebulae of the Persephone Veil. We were the descendants of the archivists who had escaped Earth's redaction, carrying with us the most dangerous cargo imaginable, the truth. On Mnemosyne, we lived not in the present, but in the million vibrant pasts of a world no one else remembered. Our days were spent in climate-controlled vaults, restoring fragments of data from corrupted drives, coaxing memories from crystal lattices that held everything from symphonies and scientific treatises to the tearful, handwritten letters of soldiers who died for causes long since forgotten. We weren't warriors, we were curators of a ghost. I was restoring a piece of music the day the quiet came for us. It was a blues track from a forgotten century, a raw, aching sound filled with a sorrow so profound it felt holy. The singer's voice, full of smoke and loss, was a testament to our species' beautiful, terrible ability to feel. As the final, mournful note hung in the air of my restoration chamber, a different kind of sound began to bleed through the hull of our world, a hum, low and pervasive, a frequency that felt like the absence of thought. At first, it was subtle. Kael, our eldest keeper, dismissed it as a resonance from a passing asteroid. But then the little thing started. Sorry, our brilliant young network technician, forgot the sequence for a diagnostic she'd run 1,000 times. Reese, the stoic head of our small security detail, found himself staring at a patrol roster, the names of his closest friends suddenly feeling like foreign words. The hum was a solvent, dissolving the bonds of memory. And we, the keepers of memory itself, felt it more acutely than anyone. It was a sensor, a scout vessel of the stillness, long and obsidian, shaped like a sliver of frozen night. It didn't scan us with energy beams or target us with weapons. It simply drifted, and its presence was an erasure. The field it generated was designed to pacify, to quiet, to make its targets forget their own defiance. We could feel our history, the very reason for our existence, fraying at the edges. The names of Earth's continents grew fuzzy. The faces of its historical figures blurred. The blues track I had just restored became a vague, irritating noise in the back of my mind. Kyle, his face a mask of horrified realization. Understood first. They had found us. This wasn't a random patrol. This was a deliberate act of cosmic censorship. The sensor's passive field was just the beginning. It was scanning, tasting, realizing with cold, alien certainty that our little moonlet wasn't just another forgotten colony. It was a library, an archive of the very chaos they had worked for millennia to scrub from the galaxy. The hum intensified. The lights in the corridors flickered as Mnemosyne's own AI began to struggle, its core programming warring against the encroaching wave of placid logic. Red alerts bloomed on our consoles, not for hull breaches or weapons fire, but for cascading data corruption. Entire server banks containing centuries of art and literature were being wiped, replaced with nothing. A digital void where our soul had been. An erasure protocol had been initiated. Kale grabbed me by the arm, his eyes burning with a clarity that fought against the encroaching fog. "They will not break us, Elara," he rasped, his own memories of the Keeper's oath already beginning to tatter. "They will redact us. Make it so we were never here. You cannot let that happen." He pushed a heavy metallic sphere into my hands. The core echo. It was cold to the touch, its surface etched with swirling patterns that seemed to shift beneath my gaze. It wasn't just a data storage device, it was a quantum entangled vessel, containing the raw, unfiltered consciousness of Earth, the joy, the grief, the rage, the love. It held the memory of the blues singer's voice. Reese appeared, his rifle held tight, his jaw set. He herded me and a terrified Sari toward the old hangar bay, where the Vagrant was docked. It was a relic, a cobbled-together survey ship we used for scavenging parts, but it was our only way out. "The sensor is locking down our primary systems," Reese growled, firing his sidearm at a sparking door panel to force it open. "We have minutes, if that." Kyle stood before the central command console, his frail form silhouetted against a dying screen that flickered with images of a world he was now struggling to recall. He was initiating a feedback loop, preparing to overload Mnemosyne's power core. It wouldn't destroy the sensor, not even scratch it, but the resulting blast of raw energy might momentarily disrupt its erasure field, giving us a window. "Go," he commanded, his voice broadcast through our comms, already strained and distant. "Don't preserve the memory. Make it a weapon. Make them hear the noise. Make them remember." His voice cut out, replaced by static, and then a profound and terrible silence. We scrambled aboard the Vagrant, the ship groaning in protest as Sari bypassed a dozen dead systems, forcing its engines to life. As Reese piloted us out of the crumbling hangar, we looked back at our home. Mnemosyne didn't explode. There was no fireball, no grand, defiant end. As the energy from its core dissipated into the sensor's field, the moonlet simply went quiet. Its lights winked out, its communication signals flatlined, its heat signature vanished from our screens. It was still there, a dead rock in space, but it had been hollowed out, its purpose, its very history, deleted from the universe. We were adrift in a stolen, dying ship, a grizzled guard, a terrified technician, and a librarian, clutching the last true memory of our species. The stillness wasn't hunting us to kill us. They were hunting us to complete their great work, to find the last, stubborn echo of humanity and finally, irrevocably, turn it to silence. But as I held the core echo, feeling the faint, chaotic thrum of a billion lives within it, I knew silence was no longer an option. Kael's last command had not been a plea. It had been a declaration of a new kind of war. We weren't just the keepers of a memory anymore. We were its inheritors, and we were about to make the entire galaxy listen to our song. The silence that followed Namazani's redaction was a new and predatory thing. It wasn't the quiet of empty space. It was the sound of a question that had been answered with a final, definitive no. We were ghosts in a tin can, the vagrant wheezing around us, its life support systems flickering in a desperate Morse code of survival. For hours, we didn't speak. Reese, his knuckles white on the flight controls, steered us into the deepest, darkest lane he could find, a path between dead stars where light itself seemed to have given up. Sari was a blur of motion at her console, her face illuminated by the sickly green glow of diagnostic screens, her earlier terror now calcified into a focused, frantic energy. She was coaxing life back into a ship that wanted to die, rerouting power from non-essential systems, patching code with a speed that was breathtaking. I sat strapped into the co-pilot's chair, the core echo heavy in my lap, its coldness seeping through my worn jumpsuit. It felt like a tombstone. Kael's face, his last defiant expression, was burned into my mind. He hadn't just given me a library. He'd given me a burden that had the mass of 1 billion souls. The hum returned without warning. It was fainter than before, a ghost of the frequency that had unmade our world. But it was there, a needle of ice tracing a path down my spine. On the long-range sensors, a shadow detached itself from the background radiation of the cosmos. The sensor, it was following us. "It's tracking our energy signature," Sari whispered, her voice tight with renewed fear. "The vagrant is leaking radiation like a sieve. Every system I patch just opens another leak somewhere else." Reese slammed a fist against the dashboard. "We can't outrun it. This ship wasn't built for speed. It was built to haul rocks. We need to hide." But where could a memory hide in a universe ruled by an entity that devoured history? The hum grew stronger, and with it came the fog. I felt the name for the color blue begin to slip from my mind, the concept remaining, but the word dissolving like sugar in water. I saw Reese hesitate, his hand hovering over a control, a flicker of confusion in his eyes as a lifetime of piloting instinct momentarily deserted him. This was how they won. Not with a bang, but with a slow, creeping unraveling of the self. "Make it a weapon." Kael's voice echoed in my memory, a memory that was itself now under assault. But how the core echo was a passive thing, a vessel. It was an archive, not an arsenal. I closed my eyes, pressing my hands against the sphere's intricate surface. I tried to do what I had always done as a keeper. I tried to listen. I reached out with my consciousness, not to browse a file or access a record, but to feel the essence of what it held. What I felt was not data. It was a storm, a chaotic, overwhelming tsunami of human experience. I felt the searing heat of a starship's engine room in a forgotten war, the bitter cold of a first winter on a new colony world, the heart-stopping joy of a scientist watching a theory prove true, the crushing weight of a parent burying a child. I heard 1 billion conversations at once, arguments and love songs, prayers and curses, jokes and eulogies, all crashing together in a symphony of glorious, unbearable noise. It was too much. The raw, unfiltered chaos of our species was not meant for a single mind to bear. My head throbbed, a white-hot agony that threatened to tear me apart. This wasn't a library, it was a singularity of feeling, and I was falling into it. "Elara," Reese's voice cut through the storm, pulling me back from the brink. "I need a destination anywhere. Someplace they wouldn't look. Someplace messy." Messy. The word sparked an idea, a desperate, insane gamble born from the chaos I had just touched. The stillness craved order, quiet, predictability, and it smoothed the rough edges of the galaxy. So, we had to go where the edges were sharpest, a place so jagged and discordant that their placid logic couldn't get a foothold. I remembered a name from an old star chart, a sector blacklisted by every major faction for centuries, a place considered not just dangerous, but fundamentally broken. The chromatic maelstrom, I said, my voice hoarse. There's a ship graveyard within it, a place the old prospectors called the Sargasso of Rex. It's a navigational nightmare. Unstable gravity wells, rogue AI signals from dead warships, pockets of fractured space-time. It's pure chaos. Reese's grim face broke into the first semblance of a smile I'd seen in days. Chaos. I like it. Sorry. Can you plot a jump? Sari's fingers flew across her console. The nav computer is half corrupted, and the maelstrom's gravitational tides are unpredictable. I can try to get us to the edge, but the final approach will be blind, and we only have enough power for one jump. If we miss, we're dead in the water. The hum from the sensor was a physical pressure now, pressing in on the vagrant's hull. The lights dimmed, and for a terrifying second, the artificial gravity failed, leaving us floating. The erasure field was strengthening, preparing to redact us. We were out of time. Do it, Reese commanded, as Sari began the jump sequence, a process that felt agonizingly slow. I looked back at the sensor's shadow growing on our view screen. Hiding wasn't enough. We had to fight back, even in some small way. We had to prove Kael's sacrifice meant something. I held the core echo again, but this time, I didn't try to absorb the storm. I searched for a single thread within it, a single voice. I looked for the blues singer. I found him in a sea of memories, his voice a thread of beautiful, aching sorrow. It was a sound born from hardship, a noise that took pain and turned it into art. It was everything the stillness was not. Focusing all my will, I pulled that single memory, that one piece of chaotic, emotional data, from the core. I didn't broadcast it over the comms. I pushed it outward, through the hull of the vagrant, using my own mind as a conduit. I weaponized a memory of a song. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the hum from the sensor faltered. It stuttered, like a perfect note suddenly struck with a discordant harmony. On our screens, the sensor's shadow seemed to shimmer, its perfect, clean lines momentarily blurring. The pressure on the hull lessened. The fog in my mind receded. It was the cosmic equivalent of a creature of perfect silence hearing a scream for the very first time. It was confused. It was distracted. It had been touched by our beautiful, terrible noise. "Jump drive charging," Sari yelled. 5 seconds. The sensor began to recover, its hum stabilizing. But we had our window. With a gut-wrenching lurch, the stars outside the vagrant twisted into streaks of impossible color. Space itself seemed to fold around us, and then we were gone. We emerged into a vision of beautiful madness. The chromatic maelstrom was a swirling vortex of incandescent gas and stellar dust, a painter's palette of cosmic violence. And within it, just as the charts had promised, lay the Sargasso of Rex. It was a tangled graveyard of ships from 1,000 species and 100 wars, all caught in the maelstrom's gravitational eddies. Hulls were fused together, ancient cruisers were impaled on the spires of colony ships, and the entire debris field pulsed with a chaotic chorus of dying distress signals and the chatter of insane, fragmented AIs. It was a sanctuary of broken things, a place where silence could not survive. We had made it. We were bleeding fuel, running on fumes, and hunted by a cosmic horror. But we were alive. And for the first time, we had a weapon. It wasn't a missile or a laser. It was a song. And we had an entire library of them. The war for memory had begun. The Sargasso of Rex was not a quiet place. It was a cacophony of ghosts. The vagrant drifted through the metallic graveyard, its sensors battered by a constant storm of fragmented data. We heard the last, panicked messages of dying crews from forgotten millennia, the automated, looping advertisements of long-dead commercial freighters, and the schizophrenic, nonsensical babble of military AIs still fighting wars against enemies who had turned to dust centuries ago. It was a symphony of failure, a monument to the galaxy's chaotic past. And for us, it was the safest place in the universe. Reese found us a hiding spot, a cavernous hangar bay inside the shattered husk of a Xylosian dreadnought, a behemoth from the Purge Wars, whose organic, crystalline structure had grown brittle and fractured over time. He piloted the vagrant into its ribcage with a surgeon's precision, settling our tiny ship down on a deck littered with the fossilized remains of the ship's crew. Here, shielded by kilometers of alien alloy and the overwhelming electronic noise of the Sargasso, the sensor's faint hum was finally gone. For the first time since leaving Minamazani, we were truly alone. The reprieve, however, was temporary. "Life support is critical," Sari announced, her voice flat with exhaustion. She had been working for what felt like days. Her face paled, her eyes bloodshot. "The recyclers are failing. We have maybe a week of clean air. Less if the power cells continue to degrade. The ship is dying. Alara, Reese," cleaning his rifle with a grim, practiced calm, didn't look up. "She's right. We can't stay here. This isn't a base. It's a tomb. We need supplies. A new ship. Something." He finally met my gaze, his eyes hard. "And we need a plan. That trick with the song was impressive, but a single note isn't going to win a war. What's our next move?" They were both looking at me. In the quiet, ordered world of Minamazani, I was a junior archivist. My role was to preserve, to protect. Now, in this scrapyard at the edge of oblivion, a hardened soldier and a brilliant technician were looking to me for leadership. The core echo sat on a makeshift table between us, its surface seeming to drink the dim light of the cabin. The weight of it felt heavier than ever. "The stillness wins by making things quiet," I began, thinking aloud, tracing the patterns on the core with my finger. They make people forget they have a reason to fight. My song, it didn't hurt the sensor, not physically. It confused it. It introduced a variable it couldn't compute: emotion, chaos, art. It was an informational attack. Sari's eyes lit up with a spark of understanding. A cognitive assault. You weaponized a non-logical concept against a purely logical entity. Exactly. I said, "So, we need more noise. We need to turn this entire graveyard into a chorus. We need to find every active system, every AI, every distress beacon, and give them a new song to sing. We're going to infect the ghosts with our memory." The plan was audacious, bordering on insane. The Sargasso was a maze of unstable wrecks and dangerous, fragmented consciousnesses. Navigating it on foot, in bulky, ill-fitting EVA suits scavenged from a derelict freighter, would be a death sentence. But it was the only path we had. We started small. Our first target was a network of still active maintenance drones on a nearby trade hauler. Their programming was simple, looping endlessly as they tried to repair a ship that was literally torn in half. Sorry, with Reese providing cover from the shadows of the twisted superstructure, managed to jack into their network. Instead of trying to reprogram them, I had her do something far simpler. I fed a memory from the core, not a song this time, but the sound of children's laughter from a playground on Earth directly into their auditory processing loops. The effect was immediate. The drones stopped their futilely, unentirely repairs, their optical sensors. Once a dull, functional red, flickered to a bright, inquisitive blue. They began to move, not in their rigid or programmed paths, but with a strange, new curiosity, their mechanical limbs twitching in time to the phantom echoes of joy. They weren't just machines anymore. They were carriers of a memory, tiny seeds of our chaos. We moved from wreck to wreck, a trio of phantoms in a city of the dead. We became scavengers, not just of parts and supplies, but of platforms for our noise. Reese's combat skills were invaluable. He navigated the treacherous, zero-gravity environments with a dancer's grace, and more than once. His quick thinking and steady aim saved us from rogue security systems or the sudden, violent collapse of a weakened bulkhead. We faced the husks of a dozen different species, silent, desiccated things that floated in the dark corridors, their last moments frozen in time. Each one was a stark reminder of what the stillness did to those who made too much noise. With each new system we touched, our chorus grew. We uploaded a passionate, fiery political speech into the comms system of a diplomatic barge, causing its emergency lights to flash in a furious, rhythmic pattern. We fed the schematics of a beautiful, impossible sculpture into the manufacturing forge of an automated factory ship, which began to churn out twisted, beautiful metal creations, art born from a ghost's memory. We turned a fleet of dormant war drones into a ballet troupe, their movements choreographed to a classical symphony they now broadcast on all frequencies. Sari was the conductor of our mad orchestra. She grew bolder, more creative. She learned to weave our memories into the very fabric of the Sargasso's electronic noise, hiding them within the existing chaos. Our laughter was now a subharmonic in a Cathar battle chant. Our sorrow was a carrier wave for a defunct shipping lane's beacon. We were becoming part of the graveyard's ghost story. I was the heart of the operation, the source of the memories. With each transfer, I had to delve deeper into the core echo. It was taking a toll. The storm of a billion lives was no longer just something I touched. It was becoming a part of me. I would dream of cities I'd never seen, feel the sting of tears for people I'd never met. My own memories, my life on Minamazani, were becoming just one more voice in the choir. I was losing myself, my identity eroding as I became a living conduit for a dead world. One day, while trying to access the central AI of a massive, derelict science vessel, the Leviathan, something went wrong. The AI was not fragmented or insane like the others. It was old, powerful, and aware. When I tried to touch it, it touched back. My mind was flooded with a cold, alien intelligence, a consciousness that had been drifting in this graveyard for eons, watching, learning. It showed me images not from Earth's past, but from the galaxies. It showed me the stillness when they were young, not as a monolithic force, but as a species. They were philosophers, artists, beings of immense empathy who were driven mad by the galaxy's endless, screaming chaos. They saw war, hatred, and suffering, and they believed the only cure was to remove the source of the pain, emotion, individuality, memory itself. Their conquest was not an act of malice, but a twisted act of mercy. They were not villains. They were doctors who had decided the only way to cure the patient was to induce a permanent coma. And then, the Leviathan's AI showed me something else. A map, not of stars or systems, but of the stillness's own network, a web of silent relays and redaction engines that stretched across the galaxy. And at its heart, a central node, a place where their collective consciousness resided, a place called the Quiet Heart. The vision shattered, and I collapsed, gasping, my nose bleeding. Reese caught me, his face a mask of concern. "Elara, what happened?" "I found them," I whispered, my voice trembling, not with fear, but with a terrible, newfound purpose. "I know where their soul is. The Sargasso. This isn't just a hiding place. It's a staging ground. We're not just making noise to distract them. We're building an army of ghosts. And we're going to take this symphony of chaos right to their front door and give them a concert they'll never forget." Our mission had changed. We were no longer just surviving. We were planning an invasion of the very concept of silence. The revelation of the Quiet Heart changed everything. It gave our chaotic symphony a target, transforming our desperate acts of survival into the opening salvos of a calculated war. But the Leviathan's AI had given us more than just a map. It had given us a warning. The stillness was not a faceless, monolithic force. It was a consciousness, ancient and wounded, and in direct assault on its heart would be met with a response beyond our comprehension. We were a trio of mice planning to roar at a lion. We needed allies. "Ghosts and drones aren't enough," Reese stated, his pragmatism a necessary anchor to my increasingly feverish, memory-fueled visions. We were in the Vagrant's cramped cabin, a holographic projection of the Quiet Heart's location, a system shrouded in a nebula of dark matter shimmering between us. "We need people. We need ships. We need guns." Sari, tracing the data pathways on the map, shook her head. "Who would possibly listen to us? We're the last remnants of a species the galaxy has been taught to forget. To everyone else, we're a glitch, a rumor. Asking for help would be like a ghost asking for a blanket." "Then we don't ask for help," I said, the voices in the core echo whispering 1,000 different strategies from 1,000 different wars in my mind. "We offer it." The stillness didn't just redact Earth. The Leviathan's memory showed me others, dozens of them. Species and cultures that were too loud, too vibrant, too chaotic for their great quiet. The Zagar with their songs of molecular change, the Lumina who painted with gravity, the Iron Kin who forged their history into their own bodies. They were all smoothed over, quieted, their descendants scattered and given new, placid histories. We weren't the only ghosts. We were just the first to remember we had died. Our new mission was to become cosmic archaeologists, to find the forgotten children of other redacted worlds and reawaken them. Our weapon wouldn't be guns. It would be the truth. Our first stop was a system on the edge of the chromatic maelstrom, a desolate mining outpost called Kyanite. According to the Leviathan's archives, this system was once home to the Vorlog, a species of silicon-based artisans who could shape rock with sound, building cities that sang. Now, their descendants were grim, silent miners, chipping away at asteroids for a faceless corporation, their glorious past completely erased from their cultural memory. We couldn't just land and announce we were the harbingers of their forgotten history. That would get us locked up or shot. We needed a more subtle approach, another informational assault. We took the Vagrant to a rogue comm satellite orbiting Kyanite's main asteroid belt and, With Sorry working her magic, we became a pirate radio station. We didn't broadcast threats or manifestos. We broadcasted art. I delved into the core echo and found a memory of a Terran sculptor, a woman who saw life in stone, who spoke of the spirit within the marble. We paired her words, her passion, with the faint, residual sonic frequencies of the Vorlog's own lost art, which we had painstakingly reconstructed from the Leviathan's data. We broadcasted the memory of a song that could shape mountains. For days, nothing happened. The miners continued their silent, joyless work. We were beginning to think it had failed. Then, we started picking up chatter on the corporate comms channels. Reports of vandalism. A miner on the night shift had, in a fugue state, carved an impossibly intricate spiral into the hull of a cargo hauler with his cutting laser. A loading dock crew had arranged a shipment of raw ore into a stunning, complex mosaic. They weren't acts of rebellion, they were unconscious acts of creation. The memory we had planted was taking root in their collective subconscious, a forgotten instinct stirring in its long sleep. The corporation that ran Kyanite, a dull, bureaucratic entity that was likely a puppet of the stillness, responded with typical efficiency. They increased security patrols and mandated psychological evaluations for the deviant miners. They were trying to suppress the art. This was our opening. Reese, using his tactical experience, identified the security network's central hub. While he created a diversion by triggering a series of small, contained explosions along a remote sector of the mine's chaos, he was very comfortable with Sorry, and I took the vagrant in low. Under the station's sensor net, we didn't fire a shot. Instead, Sorry patched me directly into their central comm system. This time, I didn't broadcast a single memory. I broadcasted a question that the core echo provided from a forgotten Terran philosopher. The question was simple, but profoundly dangerous to a culture built on forgetting. Why did you stop singing? The question echoed through every helmet, every mess hall, every bunk on Kyanite. It was followed by a pure, resonant tone, the sonic signature of their own lost language, a sound their very cells would recognize. I felt the surge on the network, a wave of cognitive dissonance and dawning, horrified realization. We saw it on the station's internal security feeds. Miners stopped in their tracks, looking at their hands, at the rock around them, as if seeing it for the first time. A deep, resonant hum started, almost too low to hear, as one by one, they began to unconsciously tap into the sonic frequencies that were their birthright. The hum grew into a chorus, a song of stone and memory that shook the very foundations of the asteroid. The corporate security forces, beings conditioned for placid obedience, had no protocol for this. They watched, confused and unnerved, as an entire workforce laid down its tools and began to sculpt, to sing, to create. They were remembering themselves into existence. We left before the song reached its crescendo. Our work was done. We had planted a seed of rebellion, a rebellion of art against silence. As we jumped away from Kyanite, we received one final transmission. It wasn't addressed to us, but it was for us. It was a single, perfect crystalline sculpture of a star, broadcast as a data stream, a thank you, and a promise. Kyanite was the first. We became whispers, myths, the ghost radio that played songs of forgotten worlds. We moved from system to system, a phantom catalyst. We found the descendants of the Lumina, now living as cloistered academics, and showed the memories of their ancestors painting with nebulae, reigniting their ability to see light not just as a wave, but as a language. We found the scattered remnants of the Ironkin, now working as mercenaries and bodyguards, and broadcasted the searing, painful memory of their forging rituals, minding them that their bodies were not just weapons, but living histories, We weren't building an armada of warships. We were building a coalition of cultures, an army of artists, poets, and historians. Each awakened species was a new instrument in our orchestra, adding their own unique chaotic noise to our symphony of defiance. But our actions did not go unnoticed. The stillness was no longer just confused, it was adapting. Their response, when it came, was not a censor. It was something far more insidious. We were in transit to our next target when the stars ahead of us vanished. Not just blinked out, but were gone, replaced by a patch of perfect, absolute blackness. Sari's console screamed. It was a redaction field, but on a scale we couldn't have imagined. It wasn't targeted at a ship or a moon. They were redacting a section of space itself, and it was growing. They weren't just erasing the past anymore. They were erasing the future. And they had laid this trap for us. We were flying at full speed towards a creeping patch of nothing, the ultimate silence, the end of all songs. The victory was a shard of glass in our hands, sharp, clear, and bleeding. We had survived. But the vagrant was a corpse. It drifted, engines dead, hull groaning under the strain of its near unmaking. Life support was a faint, rhythmic sigh, a death rattle we knew would not last long. The redaction field had collapsed into what Sari called a causal scar, a shimmering, unstable wound in the fabric of space where memories now bled through at random. It saw flashes of forgotten battles, ghost images of alien cities, and heard the faint but beautiful strains of 1,000 different long-dead songs. We had broken their weapon, but in its place, we had created a wound that might never heal. My own mind was a similar wound. I was no longer just Alara. The singular, linear thread of my own life was now interwoven with 1 billion others. I felt the phantom ache of a soldier's lost limb from the Terran unification wars, tasted the sweet, alien fruit of a Xylosian harvest festival, and saw the universe through the multifaceted eyes of 1,000 different beings. The storm of the core echo was no longer something I held. It was what I was. Reese watched me with a pained, protective concern, seeing the friend he knew flickering like a faulty hologram. Sorry, however, looked at me with a kind of terrified awe. "You're a Nexus," she murmured, her diagnostic tools unable to make sense of the chaotic biosignatures I was emitting. "You're not just broadcasting the library anymore. You are the library." Before the despair of our situation could fully take hold, something new appeared on our long-range comms. A single, pure, resonant tone. It was a Vorlog signal, a song of stone. And it was a question, "Are you the echo?" It was followed by another signal, a cascade of shimmering light patterns from the lumina, which Sari translated as, "The silence has a hole in it. You made the hole. We see you." Then came a third, a stark and percussive data burst from the iron kin broken tool. "New enemy. We are forged. We will fight." Our desperate act of informational suicide had not gone unnoticed. It had been a flare of defiance in the oppressive quiet, and the ones we had awakened had seen it. They were coming. Over the next cycle, a small, the impossible fleet began to assemble around our dead ship. There were Vorlog miners, their rugged asteroid haulers now carved with intricate, singing patterns. There were sleek Lumina science vessels, their hulls shimmering with a new, defiant light. And there were the Iron Kinnan, a handful of grim, powerful mercenary cruisers, their armored bodies now etched with the glowing sigils of their remembered history. It was a fleet of poets, miners, and forgotten soldiers, a beautiful, chaotic mess. They brought us supplies, power, and parts, their combined expertise breathing life back into the vagrant. But more importantly, they brought a council. We convened in the cavernous crystalline hangar of a Vorlog vessel, the leaders of the first awakened species gathering under the soft glow of lumina light sculptures. It was a moment of profound, fragile hope. A Vorlog stone singer, whose name was a low, resonant hum, spoke of how their people were rediscovering the joy of creation. Illumina Weaver Prime described how their children were learning to speak with the stars again. An Ironkin Forge Master, his body a living tapestry of scars and history, pledged his clan's strength to our cause. For the first time, we were not just an echo, we were a chorus. That was when the stillness responded. Their new attack was not a wave of silence or a field of erasure. It was a whisper, a subtle, insidious signal that slipped past our defenses, targeted not at our ships, but at our minds. It was an inquisitor. It didn't erase memory. It weaponized it. The stone singer suddenly flinched, his song faltering as he was struck by a phantom memory of a brutal territorial war his ancestors had fought against the Ironkin 1,000 years ago. The Lumina Weaver Prime recoiled, her light patterns flickering with disgust as she was fed a vision of the Vorlog's crude and primitive art. The Ironkin Forge Master's hand went to the hilt of his blade, his face contorting with a sudden, resurrected hatred for the deceitful Lumina traders who had betrayed his clan in a forgotten age. The whisper was an agent of discord, a poison of perfect, curated memory designed to tear our fragile alliance apart. It amplified old grievances, resurrected ancient bigotries, and turned our shared histories into sources of division. The hope in the hangar curdled into suspicion and anger. The chorus was becoming a cacophony of hate. I felt it too, a cold voice whispering in the storm of my mind, showing me the worst of humanity, our betrayals, our cruelty, our self-destruction. It told me we were a disease, that the stillness was right, that our chaos deserved to be silenced. But where the others had only their own painful histories to draw upon, I had everything. I had the full context. As the Inquisitor's whisper showed me a human atrocity, the core echo within me countered it with 1,000 acts of human kindness. When it showed the Vorlog, the Ironkin, as brutal warriors, I felt the memory of an Ironkin medic tending to a wounded Vorlog child. When it painted the Lumina as deceitful, I felt the memory of a Lumina scholar sharing their discoveries freely with 12 different species. I was the only one who could hear the whole song. "It's a lie," I shouted, my voice echoing with the resonance of 1,000,000,000 souls. I pushed myself into the center of the fractured council, my hands glowing with the soft light of the core echo. "It's feeding you the pain, but it's hiding the truth. It's showing you the wounds, but not how they healed." I reached out, not with a broadcast, but with a new, focused harmony. I became a psychic weaver. I took the Stonesinger's painful memory of war and wove it together with a shared memory of the first time Vorlog and Ironkin artisans collaborated on a monument to their dead. I took the Lumina's feeling of superiority and tempered it with the humbling memory of their greatest scientists learning from the simple yet profound wisdom of other cultures. I didn't erase their pain. I contextualized it. I showed them that their histories were not just a list of grievances, but a complex, interwoven tapestry of struggle, forgiveness, and shared existence. The anger in the room began to subside, replaced by a stunned, dawning understanding. They were seeing not just their own history, but each other's. Through the empathetic lens I provided, they were seeing the whole, messy, beautiful truth. The Inquisitor's whisper grew frantic, desperate, throwing every hateful memory it could find at me. but it was like trying to poison the ocean with a single drop of venom. I was too vast, too full of contradictions and grace. My consciousness, our collective consciousness, absorbed the hate and neutralized it with empathy. With a final, psychic shriek of frustration, the Inquisitor's presence vanished. The silence it left behind was not empty, but full of a new, profound respect. The leaders of the Chorus of Defiance looked at each other, and at me, with new eyes. Their alliance, forged in hope, had been tempered in the fire of their own worst memories and had not broken. It was stronger than ever. The Forge Master of the Iron Kin slammed his fist against his armored chest, a deafening boom that was not a threat, but a salute. "The enemy has shown its heart," he growled. "It fears not our weapons, but our truth. The librarian is our shield. She will protect our minds." The Vorlog Stone Singer began a low, powerful hum of agreement, a song of unity rebuilt from broken chords. We now knew what we were facing. Not just a force of erasure, but a cunning intelligence that would use our own pasts against us. And we had our answer. A living library who could turn the weapon of memory back on its master. Our course was clearer than ever. We would take our symphony, now harmonized and unbreakable, to the quiet heart, and force its architects to listen to every last note. The journey to the Silent Gate was a pilgrimage. Our Chorus of Defiance, a fleet born from scrap and memory, moved through the void not as a military force, but as a traveling culture. The Vorlog ships hummed with the deep, resonant songs of their rediscovered art, their vibrations creating minute, harmonious shifts in the space around us. The Lumina vessels painted our path, leaving shimmering trails of light code that told the story of our journey, a flowing, silent epic for any who might follow. And the Iron Kin, grim and resolute, flew in a protective formation, their ships' hulls a testament to their promise. Living shields for the artists and scholars they now guarded. At the center of this beautiful, chaotic caravan, I sat within the Vagrant, a silent spider in a vast, psychic web. I was the nexus, the switchboard through which our alliance flowed. I felt the Stone Singer's patient creative process, the Weaver Prime's bursts of luminous inspiration, the Forge Master's unyielding vigilance. Their thoughts, their hopes, their fears were a constant, flowing river within me. We were no longer separate species fighting for a common cause. We were becoming a single and multifaceted consciousness, a living refutation of the stillness's homogeneous quiet. The Leviathan's map led us to a region of space that was eerily perfect. The Silent Gate was not a structure, but a star system, one so unnaturally ordered it felt like a trap. Planets orbited in perfect void, mathematically pure ellipses. There was no stray radiation, no asteroid belt, no cosmic dust. It was a sterile, pristine model of a solar system, and it was utterly, profoundly silent. The songs of the Vorlog faltered as we entered, the resonant frequencies finding no chaos to vibrate against. The light of the Lumina seemed to dim, their vibrant colors muted against the system's stark perfection. And in the center, orbiting the placid, unwavering star, was the Warden. It was not a ship. It was a being, a geometric entity of crystalline logic and pure, white light, shifting and reconfiguring itself in a constant, silent display of mathematical perfection. It was beautiful, and it was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. It did not hail, it simply spoke, its voice not a sound, but a direct, unimpeded thought that appeared in the minds of every being in our fleet. "You are lost children, singing in the dark," the Warden's thought projected. It was not menacing. It was calm, sorrowful, like a parent addressing a child in the throes of a tantrum. You have mistaken your pain for your identity. You cling to your chaos as if it were a treasure, but it is a cage of suffering. We offered you peace. We offered you an end to the screaming. We never asked for your peace. The Ironkin Forge Master broadcasted back, his voice a growl of defiance. Because you have forgotten what it feels like, the Warden replied, its form pulsing with a gentle, pitying light. You have been reinfected with the disease of memory, the agony of individuality. But we are merciful, Rick. We will not unmake you. We will heal you. We offer you a gift. We will perfect your memory. We will give you the pasts you deserved. And then it attacked. There was no explosion, no energy beams. There was only a wave of pure, concentrated thought that washed over our fleet. It wasn't an erasure or a whisper of discord. It was an offering, a temptation of absolute perfection. The Vorlog miners suddenly saw not a fleet of defiant ships, but their own homeworld, Kyanite, transformed into a single, planet-spanning sculpture of impossible beauty. Its song so perfect, so complete, that no other creation would ever be necessary. I felt their creative drive, their defining cultural trait, suddenly satisfied, sated, and silenced. Why strive when perfection was already achieved? The Lumina saw the universe not as a canvas of light and shadow, but as a single, unchanging ocean of pure, harmonious light. Every question answered, every mystery solved, the need to explore, to paint, to discover, vanished, replaced by a serene, blissful acceptance. The Ironkin witnessed a history in which they had never known defeat, never lost a single warrior, their every battle a flawless victory. The pain of sacrifice, the honor found in loss, the very things that had forged their identity, were edited out, leaving only a hollow, sterile pride. It was a psychic assault of insidious genius. The Warden was offering them a golden cage, a beautiful, painless lie. I felt our new unified consciousness begin to fracture as each species was drawn into its own private, perfect heaven. The fleet faltered, ships drifted, the songs stopped. The Warden saved its most potent gift for me. The storm in my mind went quiet, and for a blissful, terrible moment, I was just Ilara again. I was on Manamazani. The air was clean and still. Kyle was there, smiling, his face unlined by worry. He handed me a data slate. On it was the blues track I had been restoring, its sound now clear, perfect, with no hint of the sorrow that had made it beautiful. It was just a collection of notes. We did it, Ilara, Kale's perfect memory said to me. The library is safe. The work is done. You can rest now. And the temptation was overwhelming. The peace, the quiet, the release from the crushing weight of a billion souls. It was everything I had lost, offered back to me, perfected. But the blues track, it was wrong. The singer's voice is stripped of its pain, its smoke, its loss, had no soul. It was a dead thing. And in that flaw, I found my anchor. The pain was the point. The struggle was the story. You don't understand. I projected back at the Warden, my own thought a chaotic mess of a billion voices rising against its perfect, singular logic. A victory without sacrifice is meaningless. A song without a blue note is just noise. A life without loss is not a life. You're not healing us. You're gutting us. I pushed back, not with a block, but with an infection of truth. I took the Warden's perfect visions and I corrupted them with reality. Into the Vorlag's perfect city sculpture, I injected the memory of the first apprentice who, in a moment of creative rebellion, chipped his master's perfect stone, creating the first beautiful flaw into the luminous ocean of light. I cast the shadow of the first explorer who dared to ask, "What lies beyond the light?" igniting the spark of curiosity that defined them. Into the Iron Kin's history of flawless victory, I broadcast the memory of their most honored ritual, the funeral of a fallen hero, a celebration of a life given in sacrifice, the act that gave their victories meaning, and into my own perfect memory of Kyle, I let the truth bleed through. I saw him not smiling, but fierce and defiant, pushing the core echo into my hands. I heard his last words not of rest, but of war. "Make it a weapon. Make them hear the noise." The warden reeled, its perfect geometric form distorting, spasming. It could not compute this paradox. It could not understand why we would choose our beautiful, terrible, flawed truths over its perfect exterior lies. My thoughts, our thoughts, were a logical contradiction, a virus in its pristine code. "You are broken." It projected, its voice now laced with something it had likely never felt before: confusion. "You embrace the errors. You cherish the pain. This is madness." With a final, discordant pulse, the warden dissolved, its crystalline form shattering not into pieces, but into a cloud of pure data that fled back toward the heart of the system. It was not destroyed, but it was defeated, repelled by a concept its logic could not contain: the beauty of imperfection. The gate was open. The fleet, shaken and sobered, slowly reformed, the silence broken by the renewed, and now more defiant, songs of the Vorig. We had faced the enemy's most seductive argument, the promise of a painless existence, and we had chosen to keep our scars. We knew now, with absolute certainty, that the quiet heart was not just a command center. It was the source of a flawed and terrible philosophy, and we were going to prove it wrong. The absolute blackness ahead of us was more terrifying than any explosion. It wasn't a void, it was a hungry absence, swallowing stars whole, its leading edge rippling like a mirage. Sari's console screamed warnings of impossible physics, space-time warped, causality severed, and a creeping informational vacuum that was devouring everything in its path. This wasn't a weapon that killed, it was a weapon that unmade, a redaction field on a galactic scale. I whispered, the Leviathan's vision of the stillness's cold mercy now twisted into something truly monstrous. They weren't just erasing cultures, they were erasing the very fabric of existence that had allowed those cultures to be. They're trying to delete an entire sector, and we're right in its path. Reese fought the controls, the vagrant shuddering as it tried to turn away from the creeping darkness. Our evasive maneuvers are useless. We're at top speed, but this ship is a brick. That field is expanding faster than we can run. The dread grew with the silence. The usual cacophony of the sargasso of Rex, our beautiful, chaotic chorus, began to dim. The fragmented AI signals started to stutter, their insane chatter giving way to long, mournful silences. The light-painting Lumina drones we had awakened on a distant wreck flickered out. Even the resonant hum of the Vorlog's newly sculpted starships, broadcasting their songs of stone, seemed to be swallowed by the encroaching void. They were silencing our army of ghosts. They're countering our noise. Sari gasped, her fingers flying across her console, trying to patch together a new escape vector. The redaction field isn't just destroying matter, it's targeting our memory signatures, the frequencies we're using to awaken others. They're making our song unsung. The truth of her words hit me with the force of a physical blow. The stillness wasn't just reacting to our presence. They were learning. our weaponized memories, our chaos, was a new variable, and they were calculating a counter-solution. This wasn't a doctor inducing a coma. This was a surgeon amputating a cancerous limb, and we were that limb. The cold logic of their mission, to restore the galaxy to a state of placid equilibrium, now seemed terrifyingly absolute. My mind, a living conduit to the core echo, felt the assault directly. Waves of pure, suppressive stillness washed over me, threatening to drown out the billion voices clamoring within. My own identity, already frayed at the edges, began to tear. I felt the blues singer's melody slipping, the Terran sculptor's passion fading. My hands instinctively tightened on the core echo, as if clinging to a lifeline. "Make it a weapon," Kale's memory whispered, raw and defiant. But how do you weaponize a memory against a force that deletes memory itself? Then, an idea sparked, born from the deepest, most primal fear within the core, the memory of being forgotten. If they were erasing the past, we had to imprint it with such force that it could never be truly unmade. "Sorry, can you target the redaction field's leading edge?" I asked. My voice strained. "We can't just run. We have to hit it." Sorry looked at me, her face pale. "Hit it with what? We don't have offensive weapons. This field isn't a solid object. Ilara, it's a tear in reality." "No," I corrected, the core echo vibrating in my hands, its chaotic energy flowing into me, giving me a terrifying clarity. "It's a lack of reality, a void, and we have the one thing it can't process: too much reality. We hit it with the truth, all of it." Reese, understanding the madness of my plan, nodded grimly. "The Vagrant has emergency thrusters. If we can get close enough, we can override the nav computer. Give us one final, suicidal burst. Sorry, prep every data conduit, every comms array, every broadcast frequency on this ship. We're going to empty the core echo." This was it. The ultimate gamble. We were going to commit informational suicide, to overload the redaction field with so much raw, unadulterated memory that it would either collapse or take us with it. Sari's hands blurred over the console, pulling power from every non-essential system, even rerouting life support for the final push. Reese braced himself, hands on the controls, his eyes fixed on the growing blackness. As the Vagrant surged forward, a tiny, defiant speck against the encroaching void, I closed my eyes and connected fully with the core echo. I didn't search for a specific memory this time. I opened myself to all of it. The storm hit me with unimaginable force. I was a child again, feeling the sun on my face. I was a warrior, staring down impossible odds. I was a lover, holding someone precious. I was every human, everywhere, every joy, every sorrow, every hope, every despair. It wasn't just a download, it was an absorption. My consciousness was shattering, dissolving into a trillion fragments, each one echoing the history of a forgotten species. I was becoming the core echo, and the core echo was becoming me. Now Reese roared. With a final, desperate surge, the Vagrant plunged into the leading edge of the redaction field. The blackness enveloped us, a cold, crushing weight that felt like oblivion. I screamed, not from pain, but from the unbearable pressure of being and unbeing all at once. Through every comms array, every data conduit, every last, desperate frequency on the Vagrant, I unleashed the full, unfiltered torrent of the core echo. Well, not a song, not a question, but the entire, glorious, maddening symphony of humanity. Every laugh, every tear, every war, every peace, every act of creation, every moment of destruction, a billion years of beautiful, terrible noise. For a terrifying, eternal moment, nothing happened. The redaction field, the ultimate silence, consumed us. We were gone. And then, the silence fractured. It was not an explosion, but a tear, a cosmic scream of pure data. As the field tried to process the impossible, the blackness began to shimmer, to crack, unable to contain the sheer, overwhelming volume of memory we had thrown at it. Instead of deleting us, it began to reflect us. Images of Earth, of Mnemosyne, of the Vorlog's singing cities, of the Lumina's light paintings, of the Ironkin's forged bodies, flashed across the surface of the void like 1,000 shattered mirrors. The stillness's perfect weapon, designed to erase, was forced to display the very things it sought to destroy. The pressure eased. The vagrant, battered and groaning, was spat out of the collapsing field, tumbling wildly through space. We were alive. The redaction field, no longer a neat, expanding circle, was a ragged, violently unstable patch of corrupted nothingness, bleeding informational static. It had been broken. Sorry. Slumped over her console, managed a weak, amazed laugh. We broke their delete button. Reese, equally stunned, managed to stabilize the ship. But what about you, Elara? He looked at me, and I felt the change. My own memories were still fractured. My personal history a thin thread woven into a tapestry of billions. But I wasn't just Elara anymore. I was a conduit, a vessel, a whisper of every human who had ever lived. My mind was no longer a single voice. It was a choir. And within that choir, a single, new melody began to form. It wasn't just human. It was a fusion of the Vorlog's resonant sculpting, the Lumina's light language, the Ironkin's embodied history, our allies, our noise. The core echo, no longer cold and heavy, now pulsed with a soft, warm light in my hands. It was no longer a burden. It was a beacon. We had survived, not by running, but by forcing the stillness to remember us. But the fight was far from over. This act of defiance would surely draw their full attention. The Leviathan's map of the quiet heart still glimmered on our console. We had shattered one of their tools. Now, it was time to take the fight to their soul. We had proven that memory could not be deleted. It could only be awakened. And our symphony was just beginning. We set a new course, not for hiding, but for the heart of the stillness's empire.